Hey everyone, welcome. My name's Allan Dick, one of the co-founders of CommerceNext. And on behalf of my fellow CommerceNext co-founders, Scott Silverman and Veronica Sonsev, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. Today is Wednesday, December 8th, 2021, and today's topic is Cyber Week Recap, Lessons Learned and Advice for 2022. Today, we've got Jason Goldberg joining us. He's the Chief Commerce Strategy Officer at Publicis, Barkha Saxena, the Chief Data Officer at Poshmark, Ian Young, from VP of Growth from Parachute Home, and Rosa Su, the VP of Product Marketing at Yotpo. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Great having you on board. Also want to thank our sponsor, Yotpo. Thank you so much for making this webinar available today. We really appreciate you underwriting it. We also want to thank our gifting partner, GiftNow. GiftNow is going to provide each of our speakers a gift for speaking with us today, and also 5 lucky live attendees will also receive a gift as well. We'll draw them at the end of the webinar and notify them via email. Sorry, replay listeners, you got to be here to win them. All right, today's agenda. We got one that's packed. We're going to do a holiday charity party recap. I'm going to show you where you can find some more CommerceNext content. Housekeeping notes for those of you that are brand new to us. Jason is going to give us his Cyber 5 recap, the Holiday 21 forecast, and his thoughts for 2022. Rosa is going to run down Yotpo's top 5 predictions for 2022. And if that's not enough, we've got audience polls and a panel discussion as well. So this one's jam-packed. So, yeah, last night, New York City charity party for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. We raised about $7,000, about 100 people in attendance. Raffled off some great gifts. It was a lot of fun. And so thank you to everyone who came out for that. Yotpo, incidentally, was the sponsor of that. So thanks to them for being there as well. Really great to see everybody after 2 years away. If you're going to be in the LA area tomorrow, we're going to be out there doing the exact same thing. If you're a retailer or a DTC brand, or you know someone who is in the Los Angeles area, have them go over to Bit.ly, LA Party 21, to apply to attend. We've got a lot of great prizes we're raffling off. Again, it's another event to sponsor to help St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Great charity. It's just a lot of fun. So if you're going to be in the area, don't forget to apply. Podcasts. Yes, we have them, and a lot of them. We've been plowing through the first couple of seasons of our podcast. Our very next one is with Noam Paransky. He's the CDO of Tapestry. He's going to be talking about transforming culture, team building, and customer empathy. You can learn more about our podcasts at CN Podcast 21 using the Bit.ly URL, Apple Podcasts, listen on Spotify or Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you're saying, wait, can I get more Noam? Why, yes, you can. In fact, his keynote speech, which was very well received at our live event in New York City in September, is one of the almost 200 different videos we've got posted up on our YouTube channel. You can head over to youtube.com/CommerceNext to see all the latest on there. Also, click to subscribe, and you'll always be notified when something new gets put up there. Housekeeping notes. So, don't worry about missing anything. We're recording this webinar. We'll make it available by tomorrow. Let me just take a moment here to show you where everything is on your screen. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see 4 super exciting buttons: chat, Q&A, polls, and handouts. Notice I said super exciting, not just regular exciting. First one is chat. You use that to comment on the webinar, congratulate the speakers, or make comments directed to the audience. We also have a Q&A tab. Now, this is just a really important part of our webinar series. We open up the webinars to everyone. We don't charge, you don't gate them. We just want to make sure that everyone in the community has a chance to come in and listen to the content that's being produced here. We love your questions. So please, if you've got a question, please feel free to ask it. If you see a question on there you like, hit the upvote button. That tells us what the important questions are, and then we know to get to those first. If you've got a question or a comment, you can go to the lower right into the field and enter your questions or comments there. We also have a bunch of handouts. We will have Jason's slides available. We'll have Rosa's slides available. I also re-added Yotpo's research report that we did with them in September. The big learning on that one was that loyalty and retention are going to be big plays in 2022. I think that's still very relevant. And so I wanted to give everyone one last shot at getting that research report that was really well received. So I want to make certain that that one got up there as well. So all three are available. If you're watching this on the replay, you'll see a little document icon at the bottom. That's where you can find these documents. And with that, and in record time and with almost not taking a breath, I bring to you Jason Goldberg. Jason, I think you've got a 2021 year-end review that you want to hit with us.
I do. Thank you so much, Allan.
Absolutely. Take it away, sir.
Thank you much. Thrilled to be here. So we are going to do a fire hose review of 2021, talk a little bit about holiday, and I'm going to make a few predictions for where I think we might be going in 2022. But I'm going to go fast so that we can get to the super exciting panel. So buckle up. Here we go. First of all, in the highly unlikely event that any of you don't get enough of me in the next 25 minutes, the great news is there's like 300 more hours of me on the interweb. So you can tune in to yet another podcast, the Jason and Scott Show. We've got 284 episodes now out there talking about this kind of stuff. But let's jump right into it. The first problem with doing a 2021 review is that 2021 turned out to be 24 months long. And by that, what I mean is almost every trend we'll talk about in 2021 had with some reaction to a trend we saw in 2020 when the pandemic started. And so we really have to kind of look at this period as a 2-year period. So to sort of frame things, in 2020, so not this year, but last year, we finished the year with $5.6 trillion in retail sales. That's 27% of the total GDP. That was about a 4% increase from 2019, the pre-COVID year. And it's about the average we grow every year. We're likely to grow more than that this year. But the way I like to look at the sales to really sort of understand the shape of what's happening is this kind of 3-year stack. So that bottom line is retail sales in 2019. That middle line is the retail sales in 2020, which again, we finished up about 4% from 2019. You can see where we dipped down sharply in March and made a very quick recovery. And then that exciting blue line at the top is retail sales in 2021. And so as you can see, we're significantly ahead of last year's perfectly average pace. So this is on track to be a monster year for retail overall. Now, the thing to caution you about is just because overall the average is significant growth does not mean that everyone is growing equally. As someone pointed out to me once, averages are very dangerous. On average, Nepal is flat. It has just as many feet of elevation as it does decline. And the average would hide the fact from you that there's a giant mountain called Everest in the middle of Nepal. And so in that same way, in retail sales, when we look at individual categories and how much they've grown in the last 2 years, you can see on average on a 2-year stack, we're going to grow about 20%. And there are some categories that grew significantly more than that, most notably e-commerce at the top. And there are some categories that grew about that average, and there are categories that were, significantly slower than we would normally expect to see, like apparel in this case. Obviously, folks on this call are most interested in e-commerce. So again, in 2020, the total year of e-commerce was $883 billion. That represented about 16% of all retail sales. You see lots of numbers for the percentage of retail sales. The trick is it depends on what you define as retail. Retail includes gasoline, travel, restaurants, all sorts of things. And if you start narrowing your definition, the percentage starts sounding bigger. We could talk about that some other time. But again, if we look at the 3-year stack on e-commerce, you can see again that the huge growth year for e-commerce was actually last year. 2019 is that bottom line. You see that big gap to the 2020 line. And then that blue line is this year, which again is higher and up from last year, but it's not up by as much. And so you'll hear a lot of people talking about e-commerce declining. And what they actually mean is the rate of growth is declining. E-commerce overall continues to grow. And again, on a 2-year stack, e-commerce is the fastest growing flavor of retail out there. So that's important to remember. This is kind of, to give you a perspective on how big e-commerce is relative to total retail. So this is a sort of quarterly view, and the gray bars is brick and mortar sales. The blue bars are retail sales or are e-commerce sales. The yellow line is the growth of e-commerce. And so you can see it totally shot up and now is slowing down significantly. And the blue line is brick and mortar sales. And you can see that as e-commerce has really declined this last quarter, retail sales has really grown this last quarter. And again, they're both growing just at different rates. So a super important thing as we go through holiday of 2021 is to understand where the consumer is at, both financially and mentally. And so we look at a bunch of different metrics to sort of understand the aggregate picture of the health of the U.S. consumer, and therefore what she'll be able to do from a shopping perspective. A lot of talk about inflation. The consumer price index is one measure of inflation. You can see it's up about 5% from the beginning of this year. So that's very significant increase in the cost that consumers have to pay for goods. I suspect we'll talk more about that. There's a big sentiment survey that the University of Michigan does every month called the Consumer Confidence Index. And you can see, in general, consumer sentiment has declined this year as we've gone through the year. So they're in their stated preference are not feeling particularly great about the economy. But that being said, there's a bunch of favorable economic indicators. So unemployment that had, this unprecedented spike during the pandemic, you can see we're almost back to pre-pandemic levels. So the total unemployment's about 4%. We had been running 3.5% before the pandemic. So on average, most people are back to work. We already talked a little bit about averages. One of the key things to know is that the employment recovery has not been the same for all workers. So higher wage workers are actually more employed than they were before the pandemic. Employment's up by almost 10%. And low wage workers that make less than $30,000 a year, they're unemployed. They're still 21% less employed than they were before the pandemic. So while we're having a nice recovery of employment, it hasn't been equal for all income levels. All income levels, however, have gone up. Wages are significantly up. And so this helps offset the inflationary effects. Consumers are getting paid more and they're having to spend more for their goods and services. During the pandemic, we had this unprecedented amount of savings as people got a lot of economic stimulus money. They had a lot of uncertainty about the economy, so they saved more than they typically do. That's the good news. A lot of this huge growth in retail we've seen has been the result of this increased savings level and bigger spending power that consumers have had. But as you can see, we're kind of back down to pre-pandemic saving levels. And so that sort of boom time, by many measures has probably declined. If you are wealthy enough to have some of your wealth in the stock market, you've done phenomenally well. And the stock market is significantly up since the pandemic. So, that has certainly impacted things. And while we talk about inflation, I think something that's super interesting is if we take a bigger snapshot, if we look at the 20-year track record of how things are getting more or less expensive, many consumer goods are much less expensive than they were 20 years ago. So the amount that consumers have to spend on apparel is down 50% over these last 20 years. The amount we spend on food is down almost 17%. But the expenses that have grown the most over these 20 years are services. It's housing, it's education, and most prominently healthcare. So as a retailer, when we're seeing how much money we can earn and how much goods we can sell to consumers, our biggest concern is that the consumer's wallet is increasingly going to these services, leaving less discretionary spending for all the goods we sell. So to kind of just double click into a couple categories super quick. Apparel is obviously, a category that was an early adopter of e-commerce, one of the fastest growers. When we look at that 3-year stack just for apparel, you can see, apparel had a very bad 2020 as a result of the pandemic. The blue line was that pre-pandemic level. The gold line, which is always below the blue line, was how much apparel sold in 2020. And then we've had a decent recovery. That green line is apparel this year. So we are up from our pre-pandemic level. We're dramatically up from last year. So there's some encouraging trends there. But again, if you look at the long-term trend and how much people are spending on apparel, apparel is getting less and less share of the customer's wallet every year, right? And so however vibrant a category the apparel industry was in the 1990s, it's about half as big a category today in terms of real consumer spending. The category that's sort of the opposite of that, particularly for e-commerce, is grocery. And I know a lot of the folks on this call aren't specifically focused on grocery, but it's the fastest growing, most significant category to pay attention to in e-commerce right now. And that's because grocery is the largest category of consumer spending. It's actually the second largest behind automobiles. It's 15% of all retail is grocery. That was $863 billion in 2020. And again, if you look at its stack, it was one of the categories that got the biggest gift from COVID. Consumers spent less at restaurants, so they spent a lot more preparing meals at home. So while most categories you saw this huge dip in March for COVID, grocery was the one category that had this crazy spike at the beginning of COVID and then stayed up for the whole year. And again, groceries up this year from last year, but not by as big a rate. This is kind of a breakdown of the spending at restaurants versus the spending at grocery stores. That top line is grocery stores. In the old days, you spent about 50% of your calories at restaurants, 50% at grocery stores. Grocery stores are still winning about an extra 5% of consumer spending, so $6 billion a month. And from an e-commerce standpoint, grocery and cars were the two categories that consumers were least likely to buy online before the pandemic. And so when the pandemic accelerated digital habits, it had a disproportionate effect on those categories that were underpenetrated. So grocery and automotive are the fastest growing flavors of e-commerce, whereas more established categories of e-commerce like home, apparel, and certainly, you know, books and music were impacted, but not as dramatically. So kind of recapping grocery, we went from 3% of grocery being online before the pandemic to 10% of grocery being online now. One side note, while we're starting to sell a lot of groceries online, we're not making any money doing it. Online grocery is basically a money loser. When the customer expects you to pick the groceries off the shelf and deliver them to her home, and she doesn't want to pay more for that, that takes all the margin out of a very low margin category. And so retailers are really doing some interesting things to try to become profitable at digital grocery. And these things impact every other category of e-commerce, which is why I'm pointing them out. The first thing is we're making huge investments in automation. If we have to pick all those orders off the store shelf for the customer, we need robots to do it instead of people. And so grocers are investing a lot in what are called micro fulfillment centers and turning their stores into highly efficient automated distribution centers for goods. So this is a big change across all of retail, being led by the grocery category. Another big trend is, it turns out one of the ways you can make your e-commerce a lot more profitable is by selling advertisements to the brands. And so every grocer in America, Rundell is Target, Walmart Connect is Walmart, Kroger Precision Marketing, Instacart, they're all trying to take a page out of Amazon's book by enhancing their profitability through a retail ad network. And this is one of the biggest trends of 2022, are retailers really leaning into these ad networks. Amazon is on a run rate right now of $30 billion in ad sales a year. That makes them the third largest advertising network in the US, behind Google and Facebook. And it means that Amazon advertisements, retail media, is probably more profitable for Amazon than AWS is. So a big trend there. And then the last thing to think about in grocery that, again, is going to have an impact on all consumer expectations is, while we're all trying to figure out how to do this next day grocery order with 60 to 120 items in them, the next thing coming down the pipe is what we call ultra fast delivery. And there are now 50 grocery services in Manhattan that will offer to deliver popular groceries in as fast as 10 minutes or less. And so if you think about the original e-commerce expectation was you'd get your goods a couple weeks after you ordered them. Then Amazon came in with this 2-day promise, and then they doubled down with a 1-day promise. Now we're doing a lot of same-day delivery. And very shortly, the consumer expectation is that they should be able to get goods 10 minutes after they realize they want them. So big impact. Can't talk about 2021 or e-commerce in general without talking about specific Amazon trends. So I'm going to highlight just a few for you. One of the big news is Amazon is opening a chain of grocery stores. This is different than Whole Foods. They have about 26 of these open right now. The last ones they open are just walkout technology. So that Amazon Go technology, where you don't have to go to the cash wrap for a convenience store, they have successfully brought to a grocery store. And there are some rumors that Amazon has plans to open more than 1,000 of these. If they do that, they become a significant player in grocery, and that's a big game changer. One of the interesting things about their grocery store is it's a digitally enabled grocery store. So there's no paper price tags. There's a digital fact tag for every item in the store. And look what's prominently displayed on those fact tags. That's the average rating and review for every product in the grocery store. So as Yotpo will certainly tell you, ratings and reviews online are like arguably the most important attribute that most strongly correlates with sales. And now that consumers are coming back to stores, they want to see those ratings and reviews in the store. So this is a big trend that we're seeing play out everywhere. 2021 was an interesting year. Amazon has opened more fulfillment center space in 2020 and 2021 than Walmart opened in their entire history. So that green line is the 400 million square feet of distribution center space that Amazon now has. This is a insurmountable competitive advantage versus any other retailer. If you win in e-commerce by having the most goods closest to the consumer, this is a very scary trend for the rest of retail to face. And if we even just think about sales, this blue line is Walmart's US revenue, and that dotted line is Amazon's US revenue. So 2021, it was probably the year that Amazon officially passed Walmart as the largest retailer in the US. So a lot brewing at Amazon. Let's zoom down to the holiday season. A couple things to know about the holiday season. We don't have any perfect real-time data on holiday sales. The U.S. Department of Commerce holiday data won't come out until mid-January will be the first look we have, and mid-February will be the more detailed look. But we have a lot of great vendors that have a lot of customers, and they aggregate their customer data and share it anonymously. And so a couple of the sources I look at for holiday sales are Adobe, which is all e-commerce sales. Their analytics package is installed on a lot of big e-commerce sites. Salesforce via their Commerce Cloud, and then MasterCard aggregates some of their data. So each of them make reports on how much e-commerce grew each of the big shopping days last year versus this year. And I have kind of summarized all three of them because they don't frankly agree. From last year, and also what this year's sales were versus 2 years ago. So from Adobe's standpoint, on the big three shopping days, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Adobe says that e-commerce was actually down on those 3 days this year versus last year, but that we're up almost 19% from 2 years ago. Salesforce says that we're up this year from last year by about 3.5%, and we're up a whopping 60% this year from last year. And MasterCard, it sort of splits the difference. They say we're more up this year than either of the other two sources, but they say we're up about 30% from 2 years ago. So kind of looking at those three data points, you can see that like there was little to modest growth in e-commerce during the big holiday days this year versus last year, but still significant growth versus 2 years ago. When we double click into brick and mortar, Adobe and Salesforce don't measure that for us. So we just have the MasterCard data. And here you can see that total retail was probably up 15% this year versus last year, which is a very significant growth. Or I'm sorry, 6% this year versus last year, which is still above average growth for those days. And we're up about 15% versus 2 years ago. So in general, again, on average, the holiday was very healthy. If we kind of put this in historical perspective, the best forecast we have right now is we're probably this holiday season going to end up about 9 or 10%, which is that final bar on the right. And if you compare that to the last 20 years of holiday growth, it's in the top four. It's the largest growth we've had in over 8 years. So this is going to be a huge holiday period. There's a lot of nuances in there, how much people are paying for things, how much of that is inflation versus demand, how much of that got spread out over more days instead of just those big holiday days. We'll jump into all that in the panel in just a minute. But sort of rolling all this up and saying, what can we expect for 2022? I have pulled a couple of the trends that I think are going to be most important. Predicting the future is always hard, and I'm particularly famous for being bad at it. So take this all with a grain of salt. But one of the big things that we're really seeing is that as customers have gotten more digital and are doing more of their shopping online, we like to joke that e-commerce solved buying but broke shopping. And what that means is we're really good at fulfilling demand that people know they have. We're not good at helping customers discover stuff they don't know they want and enabling them to buy it. And so one of the big trends this year is digital discovery of product. And usually that's not happening on a retailer site. It's happening on a social network. It's happening on a search engine. It's happening in all these thousands of micro moments in the consumer's life. So I like to call it the debundling of shopping. All shopping used to happen at one time in a store. Occasionally it would happen all together at one point on an e-commerce site, but increasingly it's spread out amongst all of these different micro moments. And some of the most important micro moments for discovery are these social moments. Minutes of consumption with social media are way up. Social commerce in China is enormous. It is much smaller in the US. And a particular flavor of social commerce we're talking about a lot right now from a pilot standpoint is live streaming. So I just kind of like to frame it up for everyone and remind everyone there's a bunch of different flavors of social commerce. There's social discovery, finding something on Pinterest that you ultimately want to buy at Target. There's social commerce, finding something on Instagram that you buy directly from Instagram. There's video commerce, finding something on YouTube that you buy during a YouTube video. There's one-to-many live streaming, finding something on a TikTok stream that you buy directly from in that stream in the moment, and one-to-one live streaming, talking live to a sales associate from a store or a service center that maybe is giving you some advice about apparel in your closet at home and then helping you sell those goods. So we have all those kind of flavors in the ecosystem. You're seeing retailers lean into this in a big way because they're worried as customers go online that they need to replace the in-store discovery experience that they used to own. So you're seeing Walmart make a huge investment in live streaming. They launched the first live streaming event on TikTok. They've now launched the first live streaming event on Twitter as well. And they're programming a bunch of content. Even grocers are getting into the live streaming game with Albertsons. Nordstrom is making a big investment in live streaming. I'm not saying that 2022 is going to be a huge year in terms of revenue from these activities, but I think we're going to see a lot more test and learn going on than ever before. And then the other big trend is really retailers inventing their own brands and kind of the lines blurring between a retailer and a brand. And the reason for this is the most successful product inventor of the last 5 years is a retailer. It's Target. Target has invented 11 brands in the last 5 years that sell over $1 billion a year. None of the legacy consumer brand companies have had anything like this successful a track record. And they're doing it with a different playbook. This is not private label that just sits on the shelf next to the national brand. This are products that are invented with differentiated features on purpose and then marketed very extensively. So you think about some of those Amazon products. The Amazon Echo is not a private label Bluetooth speaker. It's a unique product that, frankly, performs much better than Sony in the marketplace. And think about how Amazon markets that product, right? Amazon has the 7th most popular website in the United States of America. 50% of the pixels on that website are dedicated to selling the Alexa. Amazon bought a chain of 500 grocery stores. The pick of the season in their grocery stores is the Amazon Alexa. Amazon's biggest competitor in consumer electronics is Best Buy. Amazon rents space in every Best Buy in America to sell their own products. And oh, by the way, Amazon has hired Anthony Hopkins, Ellen DeGeneres, Michael B. Jordan, and Harrison Ford to sell that product during the Super Bowl. So this is the new trend in retail. Kroger, a great retailer in the United States, they're actually a high-quality organic food brand in China. So they've taken Simple Truth, their own brand, and they sell it in China, even though they don't have stores in China. If you go look at the latest store designs in the US, this is the Amazon grocery store. Look at the product that's on all the end caps in this grocery store. These are all Amazon brands that are getting preferential space in the retail store. This is the new flagship store from Bed Bath & Beyond. And again, all the end caps and premium merchandising positions in the store are owned by new exclusive brands that Bed Bath & Beyond has invented. And so what's unique and differentiated about all this investment and invention happening on the part of retailers is They're not using merchants to invent products. They're not asking Mickey Drexler what the next fashion trend is going to be. They're listening to the customer and using big data. So Stitch Fix is measuring demand for minute attributes of apparel and inventing apparel that has that attribute. Shein, the fastest growing apparel retailer in the country, is listening to social media to see what consumers are talking about and then rapidly turning that into products. And Target is, of course, using the real-time data on 90 million of their guests that visit the store every week, and using that to invent their products. So I know that was a lot in a short period of time. If you have any questions or comments, I look forward to discussing them further in the panel. But thank you guys very much for your time and attention.
Well, it didn't really cover a whole lot there, Jason. I'm surprised you took 25 minutes. Yeah, I think going through a fire hose, I think was absolutely accurate. There's a lot to unpack there. So we're going to move right along. Let's bring up Rosa Sue. She's a VP of Product Marketing at Yotpo. Rosa, how are you doing?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today.
I'm going to turn it right over to you.
Perfect. Okay, so as Allan had said, I am VP of Product Marketing here at Yotpo. It's a pleasure to be here today. As a quick overview, Yotpo is an e-commerce marketing platform, and we specialize in strengthening relationships between brand and consumer. And we do that with solutions for engagement like SMS marketing, community advocacy like ratings and reviews, and solutions for retention like loyalty. Now, I can chat about Yotpo all day, but let's move on to our 2022 predictions. I know it's hard to believe, but 2022 is almost here. And every year, Yotpo surveys many experts in the field, both within the company and within the ecosystem. And we compile a list of insights about how e-commerce will change in the coming years so that brands like yourselves can prepare for those strategies. So overwhelmingly, 2022 is going to be heavily influenced by the changes we've seen in 2021. That means new privacy regulations, rising acquisition costs, and higher consumer expectations, which have laid the groundwork for some big changes next year. These predictions are kind of hot off the press. We're happy to share a sneak preview with you. Our report actually comes out tomorrow, so make sure to keep an eye out for the full guide. Okay, let's move on. So for our first prediction, it's something that has been a hot topic lately, but in 2022, we truly see it come to fruition. And that's the fact that brands will invest heavily in having a value exchange with customers, not only as a way to invest in customer lifetime value, but also to combat third-party data loss and drive growth in sustainable ways. So according to our survey, 44% of brands already believe that first and zero-party data is more valuable than the data coming from cookies. And in order to gather that useful data from customers, brands will need to make it worth it for customers to willingly provide data on themselves and their preferences. And we can do that by providing value to the customers, like loyalty rewards, early access to big launches, exclusive launches, and more. So we asked our friends at AdRoll about what strategies brands can implement to better collect this data. And according to Gavin, the key is to include selling experiences that ask for customer input, have strategies for direct engagement with customers like through email or text, and implementing simple post-purchase experiences like reviews. Implementing these experiences ultimately forces brands to put an emphasis on the value of the customer at every touch point, which means that privacy challenges that we're experiencing will actually yield stronger relationships in the long term because it forces brands to really connect with their customers. So really, the answer is to double down on some of the things that the customers care about and give them a reason to organically choose you every single time. So that leads us to prediction number 2. Brands will use SMS marketing to collect first-party data. We already know that brands will continue to grow their investment in mobile channels as a way to optimize shopping experiences for their customers. And that's been a trend for a while now. But privacy changes have really pushed the mobile conversation towards SMS in particular. The recent iOS 15 email changes are the main culprit, since these changes impact visibility into metrics for 30 to 50% of a brand's email list. But since the iOS audience is also a very mobile audience, and SMS is already adapted for that mobile first, customer first, privacy first reality of Apple's changes, it's the perfect way for brands to continue to learn and effectively engage mobile consumers as privacy policies continue to tighten. So brands will increasingly use SMS marketing to collect information about their customer behavior and purchase history, and also gain access to data that customers share willingly and proactively through interactive SMS experiences. And in fact, one of our customers are already doing that. As you can see here, Taylor is quoted from Parks Project. Okay, next up is our third prediction, and that's that brands will be everywhere. Brands will have to be everywhere for their customers. What does that mean? So as our partner Samantha from Assembly puts it, if your brand isn't everywhere, then you will lose to a brand that is. So according to McKinsey, over 53% of consumers plan to do a mix of online and offline shopping in 2022, and more than 65% are trying different shopping behaviors as well. So for example, waiting in line and shopping online at the same time, or browsing on your site before walking in to purchase. Brands will look for more ways to improve that connection between online and offline, like making it easy to access information and loyalty status in stores. But it does go beyond online and offline as well. Shoppers do expect you to be everywhere. And by everywhere, I mean on social media. And especially because shopping has become this increasingly passive and constant activity. And at the same time, making a purchase is now a sort of a serendipitous action rather than a predetermined decision. According to eMarketer, the average amount of spent on a social buying site will double between 2020 and 2025. So that means in the next year, brands will look to make that social commerce experience even easier, especially through in-app shopping, such as adding reviews to social channels like Facebook and Instagram so that you lower the barrier to purchase. And we too also expect TikTok in particular to take off as a shopping channel. All right, almost done here. Our fourth prediction is that brands will redefine subscriptions to prioritize membership. Now, 2021 was a year that subscriptions went mainstream. And in 2022, brands will focus on delivering a positive subscriber experience to differentiate themselves from their competitors. And that involves prioritizing an emotional strategy. So according to Adam, from the author of Subscription Boom, we're shifting from a transactional economy to a relationship-driven one. And subscriptions are a recurring opportunity to remind people that they have a relationship with a brand. And it boils down to an experience that builds relationships rather than a feeling of a transaction. So while subscription is a billing decision that gives customers access to a product or service, a membership means being a member of a store, an organization, or a group. It's a belonging decision. And let's not forget that subscriptions are yet another extension of loyalty programs, since they combine the loyalty tactics of recurring revenue and brand engagement. And that leads nicely up to our fifth and final prediction, which is emotional loyalty will become the foundation for retention. So e-commerce brands will double down more than ever on their investment in loyalty. They'll double down on building that emotional connection, which is fundamental to retention. And not only is it essential for winning customers from your competitors, but it's also a bare minimum requirement for brands looking to collect that data from their customers. So while you can make a customer feel emotionally connected while making a purchase, it's also super important to think about all the touch points in between as well. Building emotional loyalty involves forming storylines that customers can identify with, crafting journeys that keep the customer in the driver's seat, and creating more organic or deeper reasons, like having a strong set of brand values for why shoppers would choose your brand over and over again. So that concludes our 5 predictions for 2022. Of course, there will be many, many more changes, but all of the big trends seem to be defined by the need to create strengthened relationships between brands and consumers. And that's what we at Yotpo are all about, because that's our mission and that's our promise to you as well.
All right, sounds good. Rosa, thank you so much for that. Okay, let's just bring on the panel. I was going to do some polling, but I think I'm going to skip that in the interest of time. So, Rob, you can kill my screen. Hey, everyone. Barkha, Ian, nice to have you join us. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your companies? We'll jump right in.
I can go first. Hey everyone, it's nice to be here. Barkha Saxena. I'm Chief Data Officer at Poshmark. I am responsible for our overall data and machine learning strategy. And it has been fun listening to everyone talking about the social commerce and the connection with the consumer, because that's what Poshmark has always been about.
Very definitely. Ian.
Yeah, my name is Ian Young. I'm the VP of Growth at Parachute Home. Parachute Home is a digitally native vertical brand that sells high quality home essentials. So started off in bedding and expanded into other textiles, robes, loungewear, and now moving into furniture.
Outstanding. We've got some audience questions coming in. I'm actually going to start with the first one since it has so many upvotes. So this is from Scotty Rill. I'm curious to know how DTC Cyber Week performance year over year for brands compares to Amazon year over year Cyber Week performance for brands. Thoughts on that, Ian? You don't do a lot on Amazon, but I mean, I don't know if you're even on there, but you can definitely chat to that.
No, for sure. We're not on Amazon, so definitely can't speak to that. But our performance over Cyber Week was actually quite good. So we broke records. Black Friday was a record day for us, and then when we beat that on Cyber Monday, and then sort of like the ups and downs are following pretty traditional shopping behaviors. This year we did do something different where we offered sort of an early access to our members. To Rosa's point, in terms of like offering some value exchange, and we definitely saw a huge spike from our members that were sort of waiting for that early access, and given sort of the supply chain concerns, they were definitely shopping earlier than normal.
Mm-hmm. Jason, did you see anything from DTC brands that is worth mentioning here? I thought I saw a nod.
Well, there is no great data that breaks it down that granularly, and of course, like all those vendor studies that I shared, none of them partner with Amazon, so they don't really have good real time data on Amazon. I would say in general, the law of large numbers means that smaller companies can grow much faster than big companies, and so the average D2C company is selling less than $100 million a year online. Amazon selling $300 billion a year online. So in general, the percentage growth you see from a D2C is going to be much bigger than Amazon. But we don't really have any data.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to talk about is just a holiday strategy. In early November, we polled 80 plus digital retailers and asked them about their attitudes and expectations were for 2021 holiday season. First major finding was that the retailers are planning on promoting less during the holidays, and that definitely happened. Over Cyber Week, the average selling price was up by 11% compared over last year, and the average discount was dropped by 26%. Now, I know Parachute Home and Poshmark have two very different business models and theories on this, but I did want to just throw it out to the panel. Do you want to talk at all about holiday strategies that were different this year versus last year, why this has happened? Ian, I'll start with you again, and then I'll ask Barkha her take on it.
Yeah, I mean, similar to what I mentioned previously, we're not a very promotional brand, and so we actually only go on sale twice a year, on Memorial Day weekend and then Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And that's not changed. We haven't felt the need or desire to want to expand that promotional cadence. And so the only thing that we did do that is different is offering sort of the early access to that. In the past, people who have waited until Cyber Monday have had a sort of limited assortment with some SKUs that have sold out. And so being able to have first dibs on the exact products that they want is where we've been leaning into.
Barkha, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say it's the Poshmark. I mean, we are a marketplace where our philosophy always has been just enabling our sellers and giving them the tools so they own the action as opposed to us driving any pricing or promotions. What we do is when our sellers offer any pricing discounts to help them out, we offer shipping discounts when they use the the price of the item. And I would say we didn't have any change. I mean, that promotion has been there. And yes, during the holiday, we have a certain calendar plan through which we go through. We went through that. And our sellers just has been, they have had their own individual strategies in terms of how they were pushing the merchandise out. I would say...
No, please.
Sorry, just to the earlier point, I think Ian mentioned this. We have noticed the holiday shopping to be more spread out, like people are starting early. And I think us being in the resale platform with the supply chain constraints, and I have actually noticed by myself that I was trying to find a specific shirt for my son's recital, and I couldn't find it. But that's where the resale platforms have really worked well, because the sellers had all this merchandise and they are selling what they have, lots of unique merchandise. And there was a lot more uptick for the holiday shopping for the resale area. And we definitely saw that happening in the platform.
Yeah, that's awfully interesting, because it certainly doesn't feel, and the data certainly shows that it's the Cyber 5 or Cyber Week, whatever you would want to address it as. It seems more like it's less of a sprint now and more of a marathon. And I know when we were talking on the prep call, we were chatting about just the changes in consumer behavior. And I thought, Barkha, you had some interesting insights, and you guys were kind of riffing off of each other about how consumers are kind of wait, and they're kind of getting tuned into how online retail works. What do you think the changes have been in the last couple of years with this kind of behavior, changing it from a sprint into a marathon? What do you think's behind all that?
So I would say in general, we have seen people just spreading their shopping instead of like it just being like the 1 or 2 days. Something like, I think Ian, you also mentioned that it's people are spreading, and they're this year specifically. I think it's because of the supply chain constraint and how much we have talked about. I think consumers, I know I as a consumer definitely is shopping early, because you don't want to be in the boat where last day you are rushing into the stores and going and not finding stuff. So I think that has definitely been there. And the other thing, as a data geek, what I noticed was even the intraday trends had a difference as compared to last year. And this is where, on the data, you always have to put a human perspective. And my human perspective was, last year, people didn't get together with the families. This year, they were getting together. And I think that impacted. Like, you didn't want to just finish a dinner and just start shopping. And you spread it out earlier or the later. But, those are the trends, I was like, we were just joking about, like, you will notice it if you are a data geek who's keeping track of these intraday trends, because over the month and over the year, it all just blurs out. But definitely some different consumer behavior.
Allan, one thing I do think is different about this year versus most is usually we play this game of promotional chicken, right? Where we offer a good price on Black Friday or Cyber Monday, and we tell consumers, this is the best deal, order now, because we're trying to get those orders before that consumer goes to some other retailer. And there won't be a better deal in a week. And then in a week, when we're not hitting our numbers, we offer better deals, right? And that's the normal cadence of holiday. This year, we went into holiday scared to death, right? Like, because we all had all these extra inventory and supply chain challenges. We had this inflation. We weren't sure where the consumer was. And so this year, we legitimately were saying, no, seriously, if you wait until Black Friday to shop, we're probably not going to have your first choice. And if everyone buys everything online, FedEx isn't going to have enough time to deliver everything in time for the holidays. What happened last year, and we called Ship-A-Geddon. And so every one of my big retail clients had a very overt strategy of saying, we don't want Cyber Monday, we want Cyber November. And, frankly, a lot of the big retailers started their Black Friday deals in October. And I'm not sure they had a ton of success pulling the sales into October, but they definitely had a lot of success pulling sales earlier into November and spreading it out for very practical reasons.
Yeah,
and I saw some heavy nodding there.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. I think to the point of like the consumer just being more educated into what's going on in e-commerce, like organizations and sort of the mindset, it's definitely in the zeitgeist, just from every retailer kind of putting out the same message in terms of, Jason, to your point, like shop early, otherwise you may not get it. And then also just in the media, like it's been so covered in all the news channels of like port delays in LA and all the different things going on with that it's just sort of entered the cultural zeitgeist that this is a big problem and not like a sales tactic that some unscrupulous retailers trying to get me out of my hard-earned dollars. But to Barkha's point around intraday trends, last year being very atypical, everyone wasn't going anywhere. Like there was this sort of consistent intraday spending behavior, whereas this year we saw like the typical travel time when people would be going to someone else's home or perhaps going to the airport or flying. People aren't shopping when they're in transit, and we definitely saw that as well.
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw there were several retailers who remain unnamed who were like, "Oh, this deal is only today. Oh, but don't forget, really the week just keeps going." And I was like, "All right, they're just training me to not believe them next year." But yeah, I understand why it happens. Before we move on to some of the audience questions, we were talking about the importance of emotionally connected customers, and I'll weave this in to the loyalty retention play because the data we've seen and the discussions we're having very definitely indicate that retailers are investing heavily in retention and loyalty. And Rosa, this is right up your alley. So I'm certain you've got something to say on this point.
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely seeing our customers really taking the time to build that engagement with their customers, whether that's through SMS or making sure that they are collecting the right ratings and reviews for their products so that they can have that community voice added to their community. So we're definitely seeing that trend. And I will say that over, the Cyber 5, we've had about a 300% increase in points redeemed for loyalty programs just over that weekend. So I know that it's not quite a sprint anymore, but definitely this shows that consumers are engaging with their loyalty programs. They're very, very thankful for them. They're using them, right? They want to show that they're being loyal to you if you provide them with the right value exchange. So we're definitely seeing that tactic work, which is great.
All right. We ask our audience for questions and we love when we get them. So let's start plowing through some of them. Mike S., and I only say that because I'm absolutely certain I'll butcher your last name if I attempt to pronounce it. You asked, there's a lot of talks with how Web3 will give back control to users. How do you believe this will impact how we market our businesses? And what are some of the things we can do to get ahead of this? Mr. Goldberg, do you want to open with that one?
Yeah, I'll go Ebenezer Scrooge on that one and go not very much. The Web 3.0 is super interesting, and there's a lot of democratization of technology that could happen. But technologists tend to think like just because they can do something that we will do it and consumers will embrace it. The analogy I always like to pitch, the first version of this blockchain is technologists figured out how to do toll bridges so that you could pay your toll digitally, drive over the bridge, and no one would ever be able to identify you. So it was a completely anonymous transaction, even though it was digital. And the technologists are like, every bridge in America is going to want this because people want their privacy. You know who didn't want their privacy? Toll bridge owners. And so every toll bridge in the world uses an older technology that identifies you, and the police can now subpoena your records when you drive over a bridge. I hate to say it, but a lot of the innovations in Web 3.0 are to me very similar. Retailers don't necessarily want them. Brands don't necessarily want them. And so if it gets adopted, I think it's going to be a lot slower and more uneven. I don't think it's something to worry about for the next 4 or 5 years.
Anyone else want to bite on that one? Going once, going twice? No problem. We'll move right along. Devin Safran, why do you think social commerce is so popular in China? I'm just going to keep moving, Jason. Yeah. Devin asks, why do you think social commerce is so popular in China and still so small in the U.S.?
Because it takes 3 hands to buy something in the U.S. In China, every consumer has a digital wallet. They have Tencent or Alipay, and it's a zero friction, low click checkout to buy something. And in China, consumers are habitualized that the way you pay for content is through commerce, by purchasing things from the content provider. In the West, we're used to paying for content through ads. And we don't use digital wallets. So we need one hand to hold the credit card, one hand to hold the phone, and a third hand to touch the screen. The total addressable market of three-handed consumers isn't that big in the US. So is my joke. But of course, digital wallets are starting to catch on in the West now, and the pandemic has accelerated that. And the effectiveness of advertising is diminishing due to privacy. So all of those reasons are reasons to believe that we are going to see accelerated social commerce here in the West, maybe not at the level of China, but closer to it.
All right. One of the things you said in your discussion, I want to bring the other panelists back in here. You said that online shopping solved buying and broke shopping, and boy, doesn't that seem to be the case. And I think that's just kind of a wide open topic. Barkha, you must have some thoughts on that. I mean, it sure seems that way, doesn't it?
Yep. So I would say I actually loved that when you talked about that, how retailers haven't focused on the discovery, because Poshmark is all about that. And I know even we are a social commerce platform, but the definition is very different. I think you focused on the live streaming, which is not what it is. The social commerce for us is where the shopping is happening through the human connections. There are buyers who associate with the styles and the designs of the certain sellers, and they follow them, and we merchandise the content back in your feed, which is personalized based on the people you're following, the styles we think you have engaged in, and the trends you are interested in. So we definitely have invested in shopping through the discovery a lot. And but I think to your point, Jason, that social commerce is starting to take. I mean, even in the broader definition which I'm using, it hasn't been as huge. But I think this year, as we are starting to see the influence of TikTok in driving the trends and all of this social platform trying to get into commerce, that just speaks to, I would say, what we bet on like 10 years ago, that social commerce is going to be the huge. I think that's going to become the more central. And I think as a human being, I completely understand this, because there is a humanity to that shopping experience when you buy and sell from the people based on the people recommendation. Like when our seller ships an item, you get a handwritten note in that. And I have opened those boxes, and I'll tell you that opening those boxes is a lot more fun than I mean, I'm an Amazon shopper too, but it just feels so much more personal. So even like Rosa, to your point, like the emotional connections, and I think that, like, I'm so proud of like what I would say we saw like few ahead of time, that how the human connections will matter in the shopping, and just enabling our sellers to be able to just provide that personal experience. And recently we even launched like a tool we call My Shoppers. It's basically now each seller knows the people who they have interacted with, like who are their buyers. So now they can actually proactively merchandise items to them. So think about like the discovery on Istio, right? Because now each seller can merchandise the items to their seller, because they know what they have bought and what is their style. So discovery is definitely a big part of on which what our social commerce platform is built.
Side note, I 100% agree. I call social commerce is sort of the first inning, and most companies are in their first inning. You guys are best in class. You're like maybe in the third inning. So it is a much better experience, and I suspect we're all going to continue to get better. I hope.
Yep. Ian, any thoughts on that before I move on to Douglas's question?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I fully agree that like the in real life experience of shopping is something that e-commerce has not figured out how to replicate, which is why we've invested in expanding our retail footprint with brick and mortar stores that we control, so that we can aid in that opportunity to shop if the customer desires, and then also partnering with other platforms and avenues, social media, other sort of social partnerships that we can do to be top of mind for that discovery aspect as well.
Awesome. All right, we're almost at the top of the hour. I'm gonna Douglas Mapes, who's been on asked a bunch of questions before. I love getting the questions from. If your business is using affiliate or partner as a marketing channel, have you noticed any trends due to Google algorithm changes in November? Anyone want to take that one?
Yes, we actually do a lot of affiliate and partner marketing, and no, we didn't see any changes in trends. So it could be that our program is a little atypical in that we don't do any of the bottom funnel type partnerships, and so most of our partnerships are very top of funnel, content driven sort of relationships and partnerships, and I think those may have been less affected by algorithm changes.
We are at the.
I would just
I'm sorry,
say
go for it.
you there's two kinds of affiliates. There's affiliates that create content and then monetize that content through an affiliate partnership, and I think that's a lot of Ian's user base. Those guys really weren't hurt. The content's still super valuable, and is frequently consumed. There were other affiliates that were Google arbitragers that were just a little better SEO than the brand they were partnering with, and they were able to make money by doing that arbitrage, and I think that's a less viable business model than it used to be.
All right. We are at the top of the hour. Anyone have any final, just earth-shattering predictions for 2022, things that just have got to be said before we let everyone go? Jason, anything?
I mean, I think we covered a lot of ground.
Yep.
I look forward to seeing people in person at some point in 2022.
Yeah, that'll be nice. Rosa, any parting thoughts?
No, I think I kind of gave all the predictions that I had to give. Definitely look out for our full predictions guide for 2022. I think there's a lot of helpful strategies in there for brands to consider.
Although I think I'm going nowhere with this question, I will ask it anyway. Ian and Barkha, do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, I would say I will just double down on the same thing I said, that I think social commerce is just going to become more and more mainstream.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to thank everyone, Rosa, Barkha, Ian, Jason. Thank you so much for all the time and effort you put into this. I genuinely appreciate it. All of us at CommerceNext want to wish everyone who's been with us for the year and on all of our webinars, thank you so much for being here with us. We hope you have a great holiday season, a happy, healthy, prosperous one, and we will see you back here on the 12th of January when we begin our 2022 series. With that, thank you very much and have a great holiday season. Take care, everyone.